Good morning. This is the Innovation Conversation. How you doing, Tom?
I'm good, Kevin. How are you this week?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine.
All
So
right.
listen, I guess we got to talk about Amazon, right?
Sure.
In the news a lot. Everything from annual reports to FTC probes to the whole nine yards. The story that I though thought was interesting was a piece that ran in Inc. And it was talked a little bit about Amazon's traditional customer obsession. One of the things this the author wrote is um, the number one word. He looked at all the shareholder letters that Jeff Bezos would write, and in one case, the number one word that appeared over and over more than 443 times in the 23 shareholder letters that he wrote was customer, and the word Amazon only appeared 340 times. So they used the word customer more than their own name.
Sure.
Um, and the point, then he went to the fact that in the current iteration, maybe they're less so. And the argument that the author made was that Bezos would always say in all of his letters, our number one priority is our customer, the customer experience. That is our number one priority. By contrast, Jassy said, and I quote, probably the number one priority that I spend time with the team on is reducing our cost to serve in our operations network, which does not sound like customer obsession. I mean, maybe it would get there, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it certainly sends a different message. And so I guess the question that I have is, I mean, is Amazon in some ways becoming less customer obsessed? Number two, by the way, was speed, which is part of the customer experience, but certainly not all of the customer experience.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one. I mean, just given where they're at right now, given the pressure that they're feeling from the street, which Jeff would always kind of give the stiff arm to and say, you know, hold my beer. I'm taking care of customers, right?
Right.
He would always, default to focusing on customers and telling Wall Street the results will take care of itself. I think the overbuild in the network, I think the over expansion that the company went through, in and through COVID, that's a big financial, burden that they placed on themselves. So I'm sure, like very current, in kind of current times, and the things he is working on mostly internally in the nearest term is is cost reduction, and kind of turn that profitability around. I think it's dangerous to lead with that. Like, I would have in his comments definitely started with, we remain committed to being, customer. We remain, being committed to our customers, and have the focus really be about that. And then it's about, sorry, my dog is leaning against me. So if you see me lean down, folks, it's just because I'm giving the dog some love. Uh, uh, uh,
I hope mine didn't hear you because they'll be coming in looking for the same thing.
uh, uh, so I just think it's, I think that if he led with focus on the customer, and then he went to enable us to really focus on customers, we need a leaner cost structure, and we need to eliminate costs where we're spending not to the benefit of the customer. I think that's a lot, better argument. And I do kind of still give them. I still am maybe not as confident, and maybe a little bit more hopeful that that's still the case.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, they say number two is speed. And I suppose he couldn't do this, but I mean, we've talked about this in other conversations. Is they're not as good on speed as they used to be. I mean, it used to be 2 days and sometimes one day, even though they promised two
Yeah,
days, and now things can take a lot longer.
I find it to be really inconsistent now, and I know why. It's because it depends where the inventory is relative to
Right.
where you are when you order it. But I ordered something the other day, Friday night here in Arizona, and I was able to get it 4 to 8 a.m. delivery the next morning.
Yeah.
And I ordered it at 8 p.m.
Right.
But then, similarly, I was looking for something yesterday Prime wasn't going to get here until Thursday, which is
Right.
4 days out.
Right.
So it is getting inconsistent, and I'm not sure how that is solved in the near term, but I do think that they've got to get better and more consistent at that
process.
Yeah.
I guess one of the questions that I would have is, and I've been writing for as long as I can remember, and we've talked about it here, as how, I always differentiated Amazon from Walmart by saying Walmart wants to sell you more stuff. Yeah. Amazon, on the other hand, wants to be everything to you. They want to be inextricably intertwined in your life, in every part of your life. Bezos would always say, listen, I want you to feel irresponsible if you don't have Prime membership.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, and listen, I mean, nobody would say I have not been a big fan of Amazon over the years. I mean, I've gotten criticism from readers who think I'm too big a fan of Amazon.
Right.
But I'm beginning to wonder, at least, whether or not that be everything to everybody portion of that part of their business strategy, as opposed to just being the everything store, could end up being a weakness for them. And are we maybe at that tipping point where we're going to find out?
Well, it's always been a risk, right? We've always looked forward to the risk. Well, first of all, I think that the notion of trying to be that, that critical partner, that critical solution for customers in a non-creepy way is a really noble aspiration. And I think ultimately, if you can be that for folks and they don't feel creeped, I think it's a great value. So I think that aiming for that is not necessarily a bad thing. Then it's okay, how wide, of an array of needs can we solve? Can we solve for that customer? And you do risk, right? If you try to be everything, are you going to be great at anything? Right. And I think there is a risk there. The one thing that I always would point to that would enable Amazon to deliver on that, right, on being great at a lot of things for the customer, is the way that the company's wired internally. We've talked about that in this before, and they have what they call internally separable single-threaded teams, which basically, means that a team can operate with full autonomy, without being kind of constrained or weighed down by the infrastructure and the administrative burden, of a larger company, but be able to get in, identify an initiative, write the 6-pager, get budget to go off and innovate in this area for customers. That's really powerful.
So like silos, some people may call those silos. Like silos in a good way, but in a good way.
Yeah, because some people may call those silos. What it does is it puts a high burden on the senior leadership,
right? Because
you have to then coordinate the silos, right? Run like crazy inside your silo. Don't worry about anything else you might break. Don't worry about any other you still have to interact with different groups depending on what it is that you're doing, but you're empowered to go innovate and do that, and the groups are empowered to go work with you toward that innovation because you've had this approved 6-pager with a full strategy that can be articulated, and you're running on that. But leadership has to coordinate those silos so that the silos all can kind of work together well to get that formula for the customer right. And maybe that's where a risk point is today, is that there's so many projects out there, that it has spread itself too thin. That could be. I mean, there's been a fair amount of turnover, in leadership over the last couple of years, and maybe new leadership is just kind of getting, although they've come up through the ranks and they've certainly been in, participated in that at various levels. Again, really powerful, but yeah, probably risky that they're trying to do too much. But I think ultimately, if you want to continue to be a growth company 25, 30 years into your existence, and still deliver 15, 20+%, top line growth, you got to go out and do new stuff.
Well, it also seems possible, if not probable, that if you've established that your number one priority is reducing our cost to serve in our operations network, the people within those silos may be less enabled, maybe less autonomous, than they were in a previous time. And
Well,
then,
yeah, certainly. I mean, yeah.
and if that's the case, then they become silos like most retail companies, where nobody's talking to each other, but you're not getting the advantages from it. I mean, fair?
Fair, absolutely fair. That's the leadership challenge.
Yeah.
That they have to overcome. You have to drive out, as when you're driving out costs, you have to do it in a way that reduces costs that aren't adding value to the customer.
Right.
You don't want to, the second that the second that it impacts the customer experience, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So you got it, but that's an absolute leadership challenge.
Yeah. And it was also interesting to see again when their report last week was, I mean, yeah, he's talking about reducing costs, but their content spending for 2022 was 16.6 billion with a B dollars, up 28% from 13 billion in 2021. Part of that was like things like NFL Thursday Night Football, $1 billion a year, right? $500 million a year to produce their Lord of the Rings series, and doesn't even include spending $8.5 billion to buy MGM, which, so it does seem, scattershot's probably not the right word, but it does begin to sound like they haven't decided which ball to keep their eye on. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's ultimately, it goes back to the Bezos comment from years ago when he said, I want customers to feel irresponsible for not being a Prime member. Right. And they get about 28-ish billion a year in Prime membership revenue.
Yeah.
And that covers things like free shipping. It covers a lot of content, services. And, what level of investment, what level of investment makes sense? I mean, that again is the leadership challenge. That's the formula that they have to understand, in how these different elements of the experience and the investments to support those elements, right, how they all come together to deliver that magic.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
I don't know I have no idea if 5 billion or 15 billion or 25 billion is the right content spend.
Yeah. I mean, the short-term bet, of course, is if you're going to bet on NFL football, spend $1 billion a year for 11 years to do it, thinking you're going to be able to increase your Prime membership to a degree that it makes the expenditure worth it. Because as we all know, Prime members spend more money than non-Prime members. I didn't see that. I think that number has always come from other places, not from Amazon. I'm not sure. I don't think they're
which number?
The fact that Prime members spend more money than non-Prime members.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I'm not sure where that number comes from, but I don't think they've come out and said, it certainly hasn't gotten better, I don't think. And I think their Prime membership has slowed down in terms of growth. And so, yeah. And
well, when you get to 200 million members, it's hard to add more.
Fair.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
The other interesting thing is, is that, they talk a lot about, Bezos always talked about it makes sense to get into retail, physical retail, when we can do differentiated physical retail. And there was another story, the Information had a story talking about how Amazon said January 2023 is the target date for a ribbon cutting ceremony for its first ever big box store. They haven't even picked the location yet, I don't think, at this point. And so,
right.
And I wondered, and again, I was, because what else have I got to do to think about these things? Is part of the problem. Because I can get to pick away at the problems or trying to figure out why, as opposed to having to actually do anything.
Right.
But the more I think about their stores, and I love Amazon Go stores. I haven't been as nuts about Amazon Fresh, although I really like the technology. But I wonder if part of the problem is, I wonder what your reaction to this is. Mm-hmm. If part of the problem is the stores have been defined by technology as opposed to being defined by innovation, which is enabled by technology. Am I just being semantic there?
No, I think you're right. I think when Amazon got into the range of Go technologies, that the range of just walk out, it was data driven in that, one of the largest complaints of customers shopping either convenience or grocery stores was the checkout line. Right. And so that was their answer to eliminating that pain. Right. And so that became a major technological initiative that was like, it started out super expensive. It's gotten a little less expensive over time. But I think, since then, and as they've moved that technology into fresh stores, well, go back to the original Go stores. I mean, what drew you to them was not the awesome merchandising, right? It was not the overwhelming quality of the fresh foods. It was fine, right? But it wasn't, that's not what drew you. The hook was the ease, right? The hook was I go in and out. It was easy. It's kind of novel. So that was a good hook. As they experiment with these other formats, what is the hook? What is the differentiation? And I think they've drastically, struggled at finding that. The tech can be a point of differentiation, but tech alone, is especially if you're serving a broader need than, the Go store is a quick trip need, right? I'm generally buying something I'm going to be consuming within the hour or two after I buy it. A fresh store is definitely more of a grocery trip. And are you doing enough to differentiate throughout that customer experience to stand out from competitors? And I think clearly anybody looking at that format would say no. And I think Amazon is also saying that. That's why they're pulling back and saying we need to rethink these formats.
Yeah. I mean, although it's interesting. So when I was in Seattle a few weeks ago, I went out of my way because I wanted to go back to the original Amazon Go store that I visited even before it was open, however many years ago. And I mean, you're right. The merchandising was never top of the line.
Fine.
But it was fine. I have to tell you right now, it's a ghost of its former self. I mean, it's been kind of hollowed out, and it's become, and they always used to have an interesting mix because they'd have some meal solutions things, and they'd have a lot of different, right? And seem to have gotten rid of most of that. And you walk in, and there was an exciting vibe then, and maybe that's part of being new. But I'd been to that store. I would always go to that store whenever I went to Seattle. I'd come to Seattle a lot for no other reason. I could go to a Mariners game, right? And so, or go to Edis, and I have to say that to this, and again, post-pandemic, right? All those visits were pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, and a lot of that whole South Lake Union thing has been hollowed out because half those people are working at home. So I get that, but there's very little. I walked into that store, and except for the technology, there's no reason to go into it.
Exactly.
And I guess that's what made me think, if you have a store where the only reason to go into it is the technology, that is a fundamental, and I totally believe in checkout free tech. I think I've always said someday it's going to be as big as scanning. But at the moment, they have lost in so many ways, they have lost the narrative. They've lost the story.
Well, yeah. I mean, do you hate waiting in line so much that you're willing to sacrifice the whole rest of your shopping experience? No. Right. And so, you have to serve
needs. You're only waiting online because you went to the store because there's stuff you needed and that they had.
Exactly.
Right. And if they don't have stuff that you need, then it doesn't matter if there's no line, because
actually any retailer can do just walk out if people leave with nothing.
Right. That's exactly right. That's a great line. We're going to be talking about this stuff when we're doing NGA in a few weeks. That's a great line. It's not hard to do self-checkout if people leave with nothing. Okay, but let's come back. Let's circle around and let's talk just a little bit. So all this crap's going on. Amazon's got to figure out how to continue to deal with all this stuff and the federal investigations and probably an FTC lawsuit, all this stuff. And they've got to continue to innovate. So the question is, how do they do that? And then what can other retailers learn from that? right? Because other retailers
Yeah.
are dealing with their own issues. They're dealing with price increases. They're dealing with inflation. They're dealing with labor shortages. Everybody's got their stuff to deal with. How do you continue to innovate on that? Do you, and we always talk about taking big swings. Do you stop taking big swings and you just bunt a lot because that moves things forward? How do you, what
Right.
do you choose your sportsman?
Well, this is I think it's the same answer for both Amazon and others.
Right.
And it sounds really cliche, and we've talked about on this call or on this in this innovation conversation how hard this is, but it truly is focusing on the customer.
Right.
So even for Amazon, with everything that they have to deal with right now, doing all that within the framework of clear customer focus and to show that these things you're doing are to derive a customer benefit, I think that will help them through any cost rationalization they're doing, any format rationalization they're doing in stores, things they're doing throughout the rest of their business in determining what to invest in, what not to invest in, and then ultimately in dealing with the FTC. If they can prove that they're not being anti-competitive and that they are doing the things they're doing are for the benefit of the customer, I think that will be super beneficial to them. And I think for other retailers who are facing many of the same issues that Amazon's facing today, right? Their costs are a little higher than they want them to be. They're fighting their own product costs. They're passing a lot of those product costs onto the customer, but that gets harder to do, and so they often are having even some margin challenges there. I think you have to your customer. The customer's bar is not going to get any lower in today's environment, right? And I think your customers, depending on your format, your customers, different things may be more important to them, but no matter your format, good prices are at least understanding what I'm paying for and why I'm paying it, and then bringing me some innovation that thrills me or makes my life easier in some way. Like you can't go wrong doing both of those, but you probably in today's environment need to more carefully pick the bets you're going to make, right? So you might not be able to where capital's a little more expensive. We're just there's the general economic environment that we're in. You might have to hit some bunts, or just get the ball in play, right. And get on base. And so maybe you're not doing 10 big initiatives. Maybe you're doing 3 or 4 initiatives. But again, I would frame, and again, I know it sounds cliche, but I would even step up my rigor in making sure that I'm framing that toward the customer and understanding what benefit I am working to derive for my customer. Because in these trying times, and we see lots of threat out there of channel shifting and brand to private label shifting, and there's just so many dynamics right now happening with the economic pressure folks are under. Really, really key that customers know that you're there to help them and how you're there to help them.
Oh, the example. Listen, and and part of that I always think is like talking to your customers, communicating with your customers about all this stuff. I mean, the example I used earlier this week was about Stu Leonard's, right? Sending out that email saying, "Hey, here's where prices are still pretty expensive. Here's where prices are coming down. Here are the deals that we're able to offer you and why." And it is empowering to a customer, I think, and makes you feel like they're again, it's the old Glenn Terbig thing, right?
You're looking out for you,
right? Yeah. Be an advocate for the consumer as opposed to a sales agent for the manufacturer.
Exactly.
Last question. Last question. Just in your gut, is Amazon just one big innovation though away from sort of turning all this stuff around and changing the narrative, changing the conversation? Is that what it's going to take, or is it a more sustained problem than that?
Well, I think right now, just given the challenges on their plate in the environment that we're in, I think a big initiative would be a double-edged sword, right? So they come out with some massive healthcare innovation,
right?
You're going to have as many people say, "Wow, this is the thing that's really going to help them and their customers." You're going to have, a whole other set of folks say they shouldn't be focused on that right now. They have enough other problems, in the, inside their house now. that they should be tending to. So I don't think they're one big innovation away. I think they are discipline and rigor, continued discipline and rigor around the operation of the company and the management of the cost structure in the company and the fostering of the right innovation environment in the company, all on behalf of customers. I think that there's a leadership challenge that they're facing now, through these next handful of quarters here. And I think as they navigate that, I think that will restore where folks may have lost some confidence in them. I think that, that's the things they need to do to restore it. Yeah. Just get back on that, reasonable growth track, deliver the right bottom line numbers relative to the innovation, that you're delivering, and then continue to bring out some breakthroughs. Because for a company of that size, it's from, you look back at the big innovations. Prime was a big innovation. AWS was a big innovation. The leveraging of their network for other sellers, was a big innovation. Advertising is a big innovation. Media and entertainment's a big innovation. They're going to need to continue to bring some big innovations forward, I think, to keep that an entity of that size growing.
Yeah. And I still think this is actually a window for other retailers. And I'm not just talking about Walmart or Target or Kroger / Albertsons. Even for independent, small regional retailers, this is a moment where if you can demonstrate to your customer that you're on their side, that you have more to them, that you are in touch with what they need and what they want, and that you can deliver on those things while still providing some aspiration in a lot of different ways, this is a moment to compete, right? This is not a moment to, you can't just sit there and crow about the fact that Amazon's having problems. You actually have to do something about it.
No, I agree. I think the imminent threat of store-based competition from Amazon that's subsided a little bit in the near term. So, it's probably not a forever, but you do have a window now as you're battling, at the storefront. You do have a window now to outflank, Amazon in the near term. Yeah. And deliver some innovation. Amazon will be back, and they will be competing with you at some point. We don't know what that format's going to look like, and they're going to be disciplined, I think, at bringing it forward. But there is a window now.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I hope everybody else enjoyed this innovation conversation as much as I did, because this is really interesting. As always, thanks so much. I'll talk to you in 2 weeks.
Sounds great. Yep. See everyone in 2 weeks, and enjoy the Super Bowl.
Pet your dog for me.
He's lying in his bed now. He's good.
There you go. See ya. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.